Here in front of us today is a 2009 Ford F250 6.4 liter powerstroke diesel. This 6.4 liter powerstroke engine was very short-lived and was only made from 2008 to 2010. Before we get started, I would just like to mention that the Master Mechanic has been working on cars for close to 30 years now. And if you guys are in the San Diego area and need your car worked on, feel free to reach out to us either by our Instagram or our Facebook down in the description below. Let's go ahead and get started.
Today I'm going to replace both EGR coolers, vertical and the horizontal cooler, both of them. I'm going to take them off, so I'm going to show you how to do that. The drain plug is a 19 millimeter socket is what I'm going to be using, and then the charge pipe clamp is 11 millimeter or 7/16. I have a piece of cardboard here just to lay on, just so it's easier to move and I don't get as dirty. And then I have my catch can for the coolant. So the petcock's going to be over here on the driver's side, bottom corner of the radiator. It's going to come out of here, and then the nut or the valve is on the bottom here, which is a 19. So I'm just going to come on here with a socket. And I still have the cap on the cooling system, and the cooling system is cool right now. There's no excessive heat pressure on it, but I'm just going to crack this. Be careful with this because this can break. I can spin it with my fingers now, and then I'm going to move my pan underneath here. So you can take the cap off beforehand. This is just the way I normally do it. But now we have the cap off. We'll go back underneath and just make sure that we're catching it and everything's working here. Also let that continue to drain, and I'm gonna come over here and get the clamp off the charge pipe. A lot of people say you need to take it from this clamp and leave the one on the charge pipe. I don't seem to have a problem with it. So I'm gonna take it off of the charge pipe here because I want to have this out of the way when I try to maneuver it out. So I'm gonna take this clamp off here and then make sure that your boot is free. That's all we got to do from underneath right here. So now we'll go back up top. So now I'm going to take the clamp off of the charge pipe here on the engine side. Same thing, it has the flex clamp or the flex pipe on it, and you could take it loose from the engine. But the way these clamps are clocked right now, it is easier to get the clamp off that's at the charge pipe. So I'm just going to take the one off at the pipe here. It's going to be kind of sticky in there. Get it broke loose. Just to get a little more real estate, I'm going to loosen up these two clamps here on the power steering reservoir, just so I can move this over out of the way. That'll allow me to move this over a little bit. So this reservoir has two of the lines on the side of it here that keeps you from pulling it up too high. If you get that out, it allows you to get the reservoir up more out of the way. And this hose over here that goes to the vertical cooler is in my way. So I'm going to take this hose off, give it a little twist. That out of the way a minute. I'm going to take this hose up. I got to take the upper shroud out. I'm going to pop this out of here. And we got a line here. It should be in there, but somebody already did some sort of repair to it. And we got one on this side. We have our two 8 millimeters here on top. One there, one here. So there's one on each side of the shroud here. So I got my long extension. One on this side and one on the other side. And we have this bracket right here, the 10 millimeter. Then we have the harness. This has got to come on the other side of the shroud. So we'll get that over here. Pull our upper shroud out. And this looks like it's really being mean to it, but it's not that bad. It flexes, but you got to get this guy out of here. So now we got the shroud out. So I'm going to take this charge pipe loose over here. It would have been easier to take the upper shroud off if I would have just taken it loose in the first place. I'm just going to get it so I can pull it to the side. Loosen this one up a little bit. Pull that over, just get a little more room. Now we're gonna have to take the fan and the shroud off. So it has the harness right here. So we're gonna unplug it. Then we're gonna take the 4 bolts. There's four nuts that hold the fan housing, I guess, because this is the shroud. So the fan housing to the engine. And you're gonna have to use a magnet, get your nut out of there. Second one's gonna be over here. It'll be the same as be on the bottom. It's gonna be 2 more. I'll leave that nut in there for just 1 second until I loosen up this side. Now stand corrected. The bottom has bolts and the top has nuts. So now we can move our shroud back a little bit here and gain a little more room so we can get to the nut on our fan. And you can see the belt rides on the pulley on the groove side. So that means the nut should be righty-loosey to come off. And then when it's on the smooth side, rides on the pulley, it would be lefty-loosey to come off. So we're going to use this special impact wrench, I guess you would call it. So it impacts on the back side here. So we hook it on, got our little impact that's all worn out. So if you don't have an airline, you can just use a hammer. And because we're going to the right, we need to be on this side because we're going to hammer clockwise. You got to watch out. You see the 4 bolts there for the pulley. You don't want to be too far over that you can get this pinched on those bolts on the pulley. And plus, if you get over here, there's more meat to the nut because the more inward you are, it's hollow because it goes onto the threads. I'm going to take the load out of it. So I'm having a problem that somebody seems to have got it pretty tight, and all I'm doing is spinning the pulley. So I need to get something to hold the pulley. So I'm gonna use a screwdriver, and I'm gonna try to come in here, put it in one of the holes in the pulley. This is where you really start running out of real estate. And try to keep the pulley from moving. So it looks like we broke loose. Let me get another bite here, so just make sure. So I had the screwdriver in one of those holes in the pulley. Normally the belt will hold it, but if somebody came on, you can see on the, I don't know if you noticed before I impacted on it, there was marks on the fan. So somebody else already had the fan off. So if somebody gets crazy with it and gets it too tight, then the belt won't hold enough to get it broke loose. So I gotta get this up a little bit, and then I should be able to spin the fan by hand, and see I'm gonna go to the right here, and it's gonna unthread. And you wanna be careful with this. You don't want to just come off and flop, because you don't want to damage those threads at all, because it'd be really hard to repair them, and you'll fight it forever trying to get it back together if you mess them up. So once you think it's getting close, or feel the fan kind of wobbling, getting close to the end of that, you want to kind of hold it. So now we're going to bring this whole assembly out, which is going to be real exciting. So we got to get it off the studs. So if you just work one off at a time, the other one off the stud, there we go. And then it'd be easier. This has a little pinch clip on here for the harness, that if you just pinch this right here, you can push this through. So then it helps you because it gets this out of the way from the fan, or from the radiator. It gives you a little more room. So we'll get that out of the way. I'm going to take this charge pipe off here. And sometimes it sticks on here, so you can use a little cotter pin tool, get in there, break it loose. Get that out of our way a minute. Radiator loose here, so I can push this fan back a little bit, or the radiator back a little bit to get this charge pipe out of my way. So I can't get enough movement out of it by pushing on that side. I don't want to flex it too much, so I want to take this side loose too, but this battery's in my way. So now we're going to pop this battery out of the way. I disconnected the ground on the other side also. Got to hold down here, pop this battery out of here. Now I have enough room to get to this lower bolt. Now I got it freed up. We're going to push this back here, sneak out this charge pipe, hopefully. It really does not want to come out of here. Out of the way. Oh, there we go. So now we pull the radiator back into the mounts. So now we have room for this part of the shroud. So now we got to work this over here, so we can come up and get it up so we can get the fan out of the way. Oh, ginormous propeller. Okay, so now this is lighter to deal with. Fight, and you finagle, and you maneuver, and then you fight, and you finagle. Oh, hold on. Oh, shoot. Get that over there. There we go. Oh, and then you fight some more, and then you finagle. I swear it comes out. Oh, there it is. All right, now we got the shroud out of the way. Now we can finagle this charge pipe out. So I'm gonna pull up our reservoir. Okay, there we go. Our charge pipe. And this bend right here is what makes it difficult to come out. That's why you gotta take it all apart. So we have our vertical cooler that goes, and it's gonna go down into our horizontal. So we have two nuts. Got one here and one on the inside, where they bolt together. There's one clamp here for the coolant. We have three mounting clamps, and then we have one bolt and one nut at the top side here into the inlet, and then we have our sensor. So we'll take our sensor loose. These are all 11 millimeter or 7/16. I take these all the way off because these clamps are around this mounting bracket, so you gotta kind of bend them out of the way. So I take these nuts all the way off. So on the inside here, it's a 13 millimeter nut. So here's the nut. It has this clamp on here. And then the one on the front side here is a 12.8 millimeter. This hose, I think I'm gonna take it off just to get it out of the way. Quit fighting with it. Give it a little twist. We'll just move that back here. So now I'm gonna take off the two nuts on the bottom, which are 13s. So these clamps, open them up a little bit. And this stud, I'm gonna take out because you have a stud, you have to pull it up this way, but yeah, there's two studs on the bottom, which need to come this way. So it's just too many different angles. So I'm gonna take this stud out of here before I try to take it off. So I'm gonna use it's an E7, it's an inverted torque to get on there, like that. And I'm gonna use a ratchet by hand ratchet, just because these can break easily on the tip, and I just wanna feel how hard it is. It's coming out easy. So if it's in there really tight and you get cranking on it, you just break the tip of it off, and then you gotta double nut it or some other way to get it out. And I'm just gonna get this the gasket out of here now, so I'm gonna pull it up on a little bit, catch our gasket. So now I can come off the bottom here. We have a power steering line that runs in the way. There's a nut right here on this clamp, so I'm gonna take that nut off just so I can get more room, get this power steering return line out of the way. I push up on that hose a little bit to get onto it. Now we can slide that off of there. So you can use a 7mm socket on these clamps instead of a screwdriver. And if you can't get in here by hand to give it a twist, you can come in with your cotter pin tool to try to get in there and break it loose. And once you think you got it pretty broken loose, you can come in with a little screwdriver or a pry tool, pull that hose up. We have another hose here on top. Then I'm gonna take it loose on the back side here. So same thing, 7mm. Get that broke loose. All right, now we're free. Slide it off the bottom cooler. Wash our clamps, get our cooler out. So in order to take the inner fender out, you gotta take the bolts out of the outside here. These are all 5.5mm. There's one clip here on the back. There's one that screws in. It's got a Phillips that almost never unscrews, so we might have to replace it. So now we're gonna move to the inside of the inner fender, and then we have some 8mm. It's over this lip, so you gotta push it out of that lip there. You gotta get all your clean air breathing. Comes right out of there. We removed that because we have the horizontal cooler right here. So there's two bolts, one right there, one on the bottom. These bolts are 6-point headed 10mm. They're very prone to seize in here, and then they'll break, which is not a bad thing because you're replacing the cooler. So if it breaks, it's threaded into the cooler, so it actually will come apart pretty easily. The worst case scenario is if it rounds the head off, and then you got to deal with it way in here. So the best thing to do is to use a 6-point socket, ideally an impact 6-point socket, but I'm gonna roll the dice here on a chromie. But I'm gonna feel, as I'm doing it by hand, I have a longer ratchet for more leverage. I'm gonna feel by hand, and if it starts to feel like this is expanding and it's gonna round off, then I'm gonna try a different socket. If you have it deep, it might be a little too long. I got a semi, so now I'm able to get around the sensor there. I can get on the head of it. Actually feels pretty good. It feels like it's loosening up pretty good. So I'm gonna try the bottom one now. Right here, you can on there, you feel. It's coming loose, feels pretty good. Both feel good. So now I'm gonna trade out this big, bulky one for a little bit smaller, still a 6-point, but 1/4-inch drive, a little quicker speed style. Got the second one out. That was definitely a good deal. So now I'm going to take off this coolant hose, the clamp here, loosen up our clamp. Then I'm going to use the same hook tool, get it broke loose. And even though we drained the coolant, this is a low spot back here, so we need to move our coolant catch. So this petcock has been open the whole time. We got nothing else coming out of here. So I'm gonna go ahead and close the petcock on the radiator, and then I'm gonna move this catch can back by the hose that we're taking off right now to catch the coolant. So we got it snug down. This petcock here on the radiator, just a plastic deal. Don't be getting crazy with it. There's an O-ring in there. Doesn't need to get too crazy. You break the radiator. But where this hose, it's a short hose, I don't know if there's enough room pull it off right now. So I'm just gonna leave it like this. And now I'm gonna take the clamps off. So this front one, so it only has 2 clamps holding the horizontal cooler on here. So the front one, the nut is to the top. So I have enough space with a long extension here. I can come from the inner fender. Now I'm just gonna use a hand ratchet because using a power ratchet, it seems to bounce and then it has a hard time with a longer extension and everything to break it loose. So I'm just gonna take this off by hand, and I'm gonna take the nut all the way off like I did the upper ones, because those clamps have to be released and kind of bent out of the way. You hear that squawking? When I go back together, I'm gonna put a little anti-seize on there. So this rear one's a little trickier. So you can see the clamp right here. So this one, they put the nut for it on the bottom. So to get to the bottom one is I just added a wobbly to the same extension and socket. So it allowed me to sneak down in there. So you kind of got to move these Hydro Boost lines out of the way, and then you got the harness. So it's a little bit of finagling, and you kind of sneak this in between the 2 Hydro Boost lines. You can get to the nut. This is like a road map almost. And same deal, I'm gonna do it by hand. So now I'm on the nut, I'm working it loose. I don't know why on the back one they put it on the bottom, but this is a factory deal, the joys of how it's manufactured. So I got my nut. And one last thing we got to do is, if you look in here, you see this here, this is the dipstick. There's a clamp up top that we're gonna take loose that allows us to move this over a little bit. So this is a dipstick tube here. If you follow me down over here, here comes to this bracket. This stud nut right here is what's holding it in place. I need to take this nut off so I can pull this dipstick tube off over out of the way to get room down there to get the cooler out. Sneak in here with my ratchet. Take off our hold nut. So now we can take our dipstick, slide it off of here. So now that I have the dipstick free, I can pull it back here a little bit because I need to get this clamp pulled off of that stud. And I'm just gonna kind of bow this, you kind of got to get a little angry with these clamps to get them out of the way. So I'm gonna pull this clamp up out of the way, and it kind of holds a dipstick out of the way at the same time. This is kind of a fight here for sure. Kind of got to fight with it a little bit until you get it twisted.
6.5 hours later.
What is holding it there? There we go. All right, definitely good thing we put the pan down there. All right, so now we're free there. Kind of got to be a little rough with this stuff. Got to tweak it around a little bit. Now when we go to come forward with this, you got to get our dipstick around. You got to twist the cooler a little bit here. You got to get this nipple around this dipstick line. So once we get the cooler, you have to twist it to get the nipple down below around the dipstick, which is a little bit of a bear, may I add. Once it is twisted and around the dipstick, you just kind of finagle it and rotate it as it comes out. So I'm gonna hold the power steering return line here up out of the way. Just watch that radiator. I couldn't really show you, but this is the problem child. So when this is in the car, so on top of it, it has this little locator, little stud. So it sits in the car like this. This comes down and then it has a rubber hose go on there that goes down. Well, the dipstick goes in between here, and it's really tight up against this. So you gotta get the dipstick around this. So you twist it, you've gotta pull it out from the bracket, and you gotta rotate it like this to get the dipstick around it, because you can't pull the dipstick out to get around it because it hits the steering shaft. So this is the problem. Once you get this out and rotated, and you get the dipstick on the other side of this, then you can just finagle it out. But this is the problem here. So I have the new parts here, which can be the new coolers. Things to take notes of is all three gaskets are a different gasket. So pay attention to that. And in this particular case, the vertical cooler came with new nuts for the clamps, but the horizontal didn't. So on this particular job, all the hardware came apart nicely. So nothing galled, nothing had a problem. So I'm gonna use all the same hardware. Just when I put it back together, the bolts to go into the horizontal to the exhaust, put some anti-seize on there. I'm gonna put some anti-seize on these studs. All this hardware gets torqued to 18 foot-pounds. And then the clamps that hold it on is not crazy. Like it's like 100 inch-pounds or something. It's not a crazy amount of torque. You're just holding something in place. There's no pressure on it. We use factory coolers. We got factory coolant. I'm probably gonna have to get more. This is a gallon of concentrate, so this makes 2 gallons. You always wanna mix it with distilled water. And then diesels run very cold because they have an oversized cooling system. So make sure if you can't vacuum bleed it, that you go out and drive it like you stole it. Get heat in the engine so the thermostat's open. Gets all the air out of the system, and double check your degas bottle to make sure it is in operating range. Put it all back together in reverse order. It is gonna be a battle. Diesels are a lot of work. Come back for the next one. Like, share, subscribe. See you next time.